Hello, everyone. Oh, my, how noisy. Good afternoon. If I could have a quick moment of your attention while we're eating our lunch here. I'm Byron King with Paradigm, formerly Agora, and I've been asked to introduce our luncheon speaker and the hosts of our luncheon. I'll just say one quick thing. I mean, I've been following rare earths literally for 50 years. I started as a freshman in college, and it was one of the things. And they are critical elements. If you're here, you probably have a little bit of an idea, or you're here to learn. And the learning part is what this conference is all about. We have a company here today that will give us a discussion of what they're doing in the rare earth arena, and I assure you it's absolutely critical to the West, to our future industrial development, that we get these things right, because this microphone, my cell phone, your cell phone, everything that we're doing, those light bulbs have rare earths in them. So Ramon, would you please come up and give us a discussion? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Baron. Hi to all. Thank you for coming to our sponsored lunch. We're quite excited to be here. We have a presentation that has basically two parts. No? The first part, we will do an introduction to the rare earths market, but I will be focusing a lot on the heavy rare earths and why are they important and why we believe that they are even much more important than the light rare earths. And the second part of the presentation is going to be more focused on our company, on Aclara. We have two assets, one in Brazil and the other one in Chile, and I think you'll find them quite exciting. The cover of our presentation is our pilot plant. This is a plant that has been operating in Chile, in the southern part of Chile, for 4 or 5 months. Right now that pilot plant has been brought down and it's on its way to Brazil. We're going to pick it up there, and we're going to be doing some testing. But I'll comment much more about that once we're in the second part of the presentation. Of course, disclaimer. Okay, so rare earths. There's of course a lot of talk about rare earths. We all know that rare earths are not rare, and still they are critical minerals. No? So there seems to be a contradiction in between those terms. What has happened is that rare earths historically they have had very small niche markets. No, for example, the magnets were used in the wipers of our cars. Probably you've always been surprised when you sit in your car and you move the seat, and the seat has a lot of strength, and moves you and the seat. That is a neodymium magnet. They had plenty of other applications in technology, but they were rather minuscule. What has changed is, of course, the increase in temperatures in the world, the fact that our planet is started to heat up and has created a full electric revolution, notably electric vehicles. No? Electric vehicles and wind turbines, but electric vehicles first are accounting for I call it a tsunami wave of demand for permanent magnets that has never been seen before, and it has created a total chaos in the rare earth market, because it's only then that we have figured that we don't have enough materials, and also of course that those materials are controlled by only one country, in this case China. No? So if the rare earths are important for electric vehicles, many people think that rare earths have to play a role in the batteries, but the batteries have nothing to do with rare earths. Rare earths go into the motors of the vehicle. The battery accumulates energy, of course, and this energy is transmitted through copper cables into copper coils, and those copper coils generate electromagnetism and the forces of attraction and pull. Of course, the movement of that motor is proportional to the amount of energy that you can input into that motor. However, if inside the motor you put permanent magnets And remember, the permanent magnets, which are similar to the magnets that you have in your refrigerator, they do not need energy to create power, to create a magnetic flux. So basically what you are doing is you're putting sort of additional powers, additional forces into that motor that allows a car to have incredible performance. No? Probably all of you have seen the video of Tesla's Cybertruck accelerating faster than a Porsche while towing a Porsche, no? Or a Tesla Model 3 accelerating faster than a Ferrari. That's not the battery, that's the motor, and that's precisely the power of the rare earths inside the motor. No? When we purchase a car, an electric vehicle, the first question that we ask is about the mileage, no? And the mileage can be optimized, of course, with a motor like this. Okay, so if this is the most important application, it is crucial to understand what's the chemistry of that magnet. And that magnet is composed 67% roughly by iron and a little bit of boron. And then you have 30% of NdPr. NdPr represents neodymium and praseodymium, two light rare earths. And the neodymium magnet is the most powerful magnet in the world relative to its size and its weight. So it's ideal. But it has a problem, which is as the temperature of the application starts increasing, the magnetic power of that magnet starts decreasing as well. And when you reach around 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, that magnetism is completely lost. And the problem is that the electric vehicle's motor works at around 150 degrees Celsius. So how do you increase or do you maintain the magnetic powers at higher temperatures? That is called the coercivity of the magnet. And you're able to accomplish that if you put a little bit of heavy rare earths. We have there DyTb, which represents dysprosium and terbium. And if you put around 3% of that coercivity increased to around 220 degrees, and now this magnet is ideal for an electric vehicle. This is very important because, as you can see in the graph, you have 30% of light rare earths and 3% of heavy rare earths. They need a ratio of 10 to 1 between them. But there is a problem, no? Rare earths, when you find them in nature, you typically always find the 17 elements together, okay? But they do not come in this proportion of 10 to 1. And that's a big issue. Most of the projects in the world that are represented here on the left side of the slide, these are projects that probably you're very familiar with, and of course you're familiar with MP Materials and Lynas, which are the only two producing assets, no? Lynas in Australia and MP Materials in the US. All of these deposits are hard rock deposits, most likely monazite or bastanites, but most likely monazite, and they are primarily producers or suppliers of the light rare earths of neodymium, praseodymium, and the heavy rare earths come in a proportion of 150 to 1. This is very important because what this means is that, for example, Lynas or MP Materials alone cannot supply the permanent magnets that we need for electric vehicles. We need to have other sources of heavy rare earths. And this is exactly what happens in China as well, no? In China, they have a mine in a province in the north called Inner Mongolia. It's called Batu, Bayanovo. And they produce this deposit is a monazite, very similar to MP's or Lynas's Mount Well deposit. And it's a primarily producer of NdPr. But in China, in the southern provinces, you have the ionic clays. And they use in situ leaching methods in order to extract the rare earths of these ionic clays, which are main contributors, typically, of the heavy rare earths. As you can see in our case in Aclara, in the case of Penco, the ratio between light and heavies is 3 to 1. And in the case of Carina, 6 to 1. So as you can see, we're net contributors of heavy rare earths to that equation of 10 to 1. Ionic rare earths is a deposit in Uganda, listed in the Australian Stock Exchange, has 8 to 1. Serra Verde is 7 to 1. Serra Verde is a project also in Brazil, very close to our Carina module. But the only problem that they have is that they have sold 100% of their production to China. So it's no longer a relevant player for the Western Hemisphere. And then you have meteoric also present in this conference. They have a ratio of 30:1, so they are an ionic clay, but they have a particular concentration of the light rare earths. And this is all that exists outside of Asia, no? So it's quite small and quite relevant if we want to have geopolitically independent supply chains, you know, to develop our electric vehicle motors. When we look, this is the supply in the world of only DYTB, so we're going to start focusing only on the heavy rare earths, and we're going to look how the supply looks today and what's projected for the year 2030 by independent parties. So essentially, you have a Chinese official production coming a little bit from the mine in the north, and a lot of rare earths coming from the ionic clays in the south. They produce 1,500 tons officially in China. However, China also takes a lot of material from their southern borders, especially from Myanmar. No? Myanmar is a country that is governed by a military coup, and there's a lot of, I would say, informal or illegal product flowing through the border, going from Myanmar into China. Why? Because the metallurgy is so simple of these ionic clays that when you combine them with water and ammonium sulfate, you are able already to start extracting them. So there are lots of hills or hilly areas in Myanmar, same as they have in China, and the same as we have in Penco and in Brazil, that it's relatively easy even for farmers to throw in all these chemicals and obtain the material and process it then in China. I think the positive side of this is that the material is extremely cheap. It's extremely cheap to do this, but there's another side that is very ugly, which is the environmental consequences of throwing all these chemicals into the land and having them flow into the water plates. This production represents almost the same amount as the official production in China. There's a production of Serra Verde that I mentioned before. So right now the market in China is around 3,300 tons per year. MP and Lynas, as I mentioned, they do produce some in this ratio of 150 to 1 is not zero. There's a little bit of production, no? And the estimated market of DYTB in 2023 was 3,400 tons. We know through estimations by Argus Media, these estimations are basically supported almost all by electric vehicles and wind turbines. It does not incorporate other technologies like, for example, e-boats, e-planes, e-trains, other things that are going to be appearing shortly. Drones today are toys, but eventually they're going to be carrying people, and they need the torque that is generated by the rare earths in their motors. They do not include robotics. No? And Tesla is making a big splash about the future of robotics and how quickly that market is going to grow. So this number is explained basically by EVs and wind turbines, and basically it shows that we need a significant increase in production. There's a big supply gap. We do not think that China is going to be able to increase their production materially. We'll talk about that in the following slide. So we need to look at the rest of the world to see where we're going to come up and solve this problem. In the case of Aclara, we're not going to be a big solution for it. Although our production is relatively important, these 258 tons represent 17% of China's official production, but it's still a small, drop of water in relative to the gap that we need to fulfill. This is historically how the global DYTB supply has evolved. The red is China's official production, and the gray is the production coming from Myanmar. No? So as you can see, this illegal or informal production has grown a lot. Again, using in situ leaching methods. So we believe that those methods are not going to be sustainable going forward, either from an environmental standpoint, but also from a practical production standpoint. It's very different to increase the throughput, of a formal plant as compared to a informal in situ leaching facility. Here on the right, you have the Chinese quotas. No? As you can imagine, China in the rare earth market, similar to other industries, they control in a lot of detail how much production is allowed in the country, and they have been increasing the quota of the light rare earths, of the mine in the north. However, the quotas on the mines on the south have been kept relatively stable, and this year they even reduced the quota. So that means that China is trying to conserve their deposits as much as possible, knowing that these elements are going to be rather scarce, and as a result they are going to become a strategic weapon going forward. In the West, we know this very well. No? This left part of the slide is a summary of a publication done by the Department of Energy, published in May of this year. You can easily find it on the internet, where it shows which are the critical materials that are important to the energy transition vis-a-vis their supply risk. And note that the single most important element, the most critical of all critical elements, is dysprosium, no? More important than lithium, than uranium, than cobalt. China also knows this very well, but China is much more dynamic than we are in the West, and what China has been doing is, through investments in equity, through providing capital, or through capturing offtake, they are already targeting all the most important rare earth deposits in the world, with a particular emphasis also on trying to target the heavy rare earths. Of course, if I tell you all of this, and you say, Ramon, so you're looking at a market that is severely imbalanced between supply and demand, then the prices of these heavy rare earths should be skyrocketing, no? And that is not happening. On the contrary, no? The prices are coming down, and that makes no sense at all. The explanation to that is that the prices of heavy rare earths are published in only one place, in China. And China has a very clear strategy of disincentivizing that these projects become successful in the West. This is the price of dysprosium in 2019. It was around $175 a kilo. And the price started to go up quite aggressively. It passed $500. And on this day that we see as an inflection point, what China did is China said, I am going to merge all of the mines that exist in the south of China into one single company, no? And they completed that merge, and they eliminated all the incentives of competition that existed within China to sell these materials. Now, last week they announced also, they clarified really something that we all knew, that the Chinese government has said, all the rare earths belong to the government, no? And if you really want to acquire any rare earths, you have to come and talk to us. So what is important is to analyze if this is a real price. So if the price is so low, then, and you have these prospects that prices are going to go up, you say, well, I'll buy dysprosium at these prices. Well, the fact is that you cannot buy dysprosium, no? This price only exists for China to buy dysprosium, but not to sell dysprosium. So behind this market, there's no volumes available, much less long-term contracts. There are no observable transactions. We don't know who bought and who sold at these prices. This is just a publication by an entity called Asian Metals. The lots are not traceable. We do not know if they meet environmental standards. And of course, it's dependent on only one country. So we believe that this is a market opportunity, and this is the opportunity that Aclara wants to take. No, we have found exactly the same type of deposits that China has in the southern part of their country. The geology of what we have found in Penco and in Carina is, with the little information that is available from publications in China, is exactly the same as what China has, but we're going to be developing it in a very different way. No? Instead of doing in situ leaching, what we're going to be doing is taking the clays and having these reactions happen in tanks, and then we're going to be able to replace those clays back on the place where we took them, consequently doing having a much cleaner experience than China. Let me explain now how that is going to happen. So, sorry, before finishing on the topic of prices, so the big question is, okay, if prices are so low and China is trying to disincentivize Western supply, are they being successful? And I would say they are being extremely successful, no? This is happening not only on heavy rare earths, it's happening on light rare earths. Right now, Lynas and MP Materials are making no money. You can see in their financials, they are under a lot of stress. And a project like ours, for example, like Aclara, will not be profitable at these prices. We need much higher prices than this, significantly much higher prices like this. So the question is, where are we going to get those prices? And the reality is that the buyers are going to be the automakers. The automakers right now are buying from one place, from China. And they need to decide if they want to take that risk of having their main competitors in their ultimate market, which is electric vehicles, and if they want to be dependent on really the heart and soul of their motors, depending on this supplier. The question is, are they willing to pay more in order to solve this problem? And if more, how much more? We did a study on that. We hired a team of MIT researchers, and we found two conclusions. No? Let me start by the bottom one. The first one is that the average electric vehicle uses around only 60 grams of dysprosium and terbium in their vehicle. At the Chinese price of $250, that means that there are $15 in each EV of the all-important dysprosium. So the question is, if we were to double the cost for them in order to have an alternative supply, would that be acceptable? And we believe that it should be absolutely acceptable, because we would be increasing the cost of the electric vehicle only by $15. So it's totally irrelevant in the cost structure to have this much important diversification. And the other thing that we wanted to study was, okay, if you have two electric vehicles and one has a rare earth motors and the other one doesn't, of course the first one is going to be much more efficient. But how do we put a price on that? And how do we convert that efficiency, that benefit, into more dollars being paid for the heavy rare earths? And they found actually this curve, no? This curve is important because, of course, as I mentioned, for a Cybertruck that has 3 permanent magnet motors, the need of having dysprosium is much more important than a compact car, no? And we found that for the highest application vehicles, they would be willing to pay more than $5,000 per kilogram of something that is quoted in the market for $250. And there's a curve, and at the bottom of that curve in electric vehicles is around a little bit above $2,000 for a compact car. And then the hybrid models, of course, the number is less, but it's still above $1,000. Essentially what this means is that we believe that the electric vehicle manufacturers have all the incentive to diversify and to justify a higher price for dysprosium and terbium, a significantly much higher price, given the benefits that it brings to their vehicles. With that introduction about the market and our case study, let me talk a little bit about Aclara. Aclara was born from Hochschild Mining. I have worked for Hochschild Mining for more than 20 years. Francois, who is here with me, more than 10 years. And when we were in Hochschild producing gold and silver, our chairman invited us to look into what he called the minerals of the future. And we found this deposit in Chile, again, very similar to what the Chinese have, and which has 3 very distinctive advantages. The first one, as compared to other deposits, the metallurgy is extremely simple. As I mentioned, you combine the clays with water and ammonium sulfate, and you already start extracting the rares. Second, although there are very small part per million of uranium and thorium, is nothing comparable to the other deposits that have to deal actively with them. In our metallurgy, we do not concentrate these very small parts per million, so essentially we do not have a radioactivity problem, or we do not have to deal with radioactivity at all. And third advantage is, as I mentioned, rare earths are not all created equal. There are some who sell for $1 a kilo, and there are others who sell for $1,500 a kilo, no? Which are the heavy rare earths. And these deposits precisely have that concentration. Second, important to mention also is that very recently, around 3 or 4 months ago, there is a Chilean company listed in the Chilean Stock Exchange. It's called CAP. CAP is one of the largest iron ore producers in the world. It's a company that has an enterprise value of around $3.5 billion. They operate 5 iron ore mines in Chile. They have ports. They have a desalination plant. They have a steel mill in Chile. And they have bought 20% of our Chilean project for very close to $30 million, which is represents a valuation of around $120 million just for our Chilean asset, something that is definitely not reflected in our share price. We'll talk a little bit more about them and the transaction that we completed with them, but I think something that differentiates Aclara quite significantly is the backing both of Hochschild Mining, the Hochschild Group really, who also owns the second largest cement company in Peru, and CAP in Chile. We have 2 ionic clay deposits, as I mentioned, in Chile and Brazil. And importantly, these 2 countries are very friendly, of course, to the US, to Japan, and to the European Union. So there are very real alternatives to diversify geopolitically going forward. The production that we can offer is rather material. I mentioned the 17% and the comparison with MP Materials and Lynas. We're very proud about the technology that we have developed, and we're going to talk more in the coming slides. And we're also very satisfied with the work that we've done with the pilot plant. I think in these type of new projects, new metallurgies, it's very important to complete successfully that stage of demonstration in order to be able to move forward. Very recently also we have announced, originally we just wanted to be miners, but we have figured that it's very important that we have an active participation in the later stages and vertical integration going all the way to the magnets. No? Notably, the next step is called separation, where you convert the carbonate into oxides, and then alloys and metallization to have the raw material that goes to the magnet manufacturers. And we'll tell you in a later slide what we're doing in those fronts. Financially, we're in a very strong position. Right now we have close to $40 million in cash. 40 million, again, this is US dollars. And CAP still has to pay us the other $20 million. So between our cash and receivables, we have $57 million. We have no debt. Our market cap right now is $61 million. So our enterprise value right now is virtually zero. No? This is our process, and what I'm about to tell you now, I don't think that any mining company in the world can claim what you are about to hear. No? I'm not talking only about rare earth companies, I'm talking about any mining company in the world. Why is that? Let's start from the beginning. So our deposit is very superficial. Our stripping ratio is around 0.1, so virtually nothing. And we do not use any explosives. It's just front loader that takes the clays. You notice here that there's no crushing and no milling. This is very important because those 2 stages are the stages that consume most of the energy in the mining industry, and hence create the highest also a carbon footprint. We don't have any crushing or milling. Then the clays go to 3 stages. The first one is tanks with agitators, when we combine the ammonium sulfate together with the clays and water. We adjust the pH to maximize the ionic exchange. Then that liquid that already contains the rare earths moves into a second tank where we adjust the pH again and we remove impurities. Impurities in our case are aluminum, magnesium, calcium, magnesium, so very simple things. And then finally we adjust the pH again and we precipitate a carbonate of rare earths, and this is our final product. Very interestingly, we recirculate our water with 95% efficiency. And we make whole the system with purchasing water from SBO. SBO is the water utility company in the city of Concepcion. So we are able to use 100% used water, and we do not have any intake of natural water. Even companies that do desalinization, they're taking water from the ocean. Nothing. Here is a closed circuit. And then the ammonium sulfate, the fertilizer, we're able to recirculate with 99% efficiency. That also impacts our costs very favorably because we're reducing the consumption of our main reagent. So we have a closed circuit, and as you notice here, we don't have an arrow coming out. We do not have a tailings dam. There's no tailings dam. Again, all the liquids are recirculated. We have a processing plant that cleans the water, and our only output, apart from the carbonate, is the clays. But given that we didn't change the physical properties, we didn't crush them or mill them, we're able to take them back to the site from where we took them. In the case of Chile, this site we purchased from a forestry company that has pine and eucalyptus artificially grown on top, but we have committed now to grow a native species. We have created a foundation, and we're going to put this property into this foundation so that we have a native forest that will stay there for the future generations. We have patented this process. We have named this system the circular mineral harvesting, and we're very proud about accomplishing this. And as I mentioned, we have demonstrated this in our pilot plant. Our pilot plant is going to be up and running back again in March in Brazil, probably in Guyana, and you are all invited to come and visit us and see it firsthand. What we like about this is not only the technical aspects. This has been a great showroom, for the community to come and see a process that generates no vapors, that doesn't smell, that doesn't make any sounds. It's really water being pumped all around. Here is a sample of how the land looks right now in Chile. You can see all the ramps and the roads created by the forestry industry. This is an area that is harvested very frequently. We're going to take this very superficial cap off. We're going to retain the vegetal layer and in order to replace it and grow a natural forest on top of it. We have a very active dialogue with our local community. At the beginning, I can tell you this was very, very hard. We had the whole community against us, basically because when you Google for rare earths, you're going to receive very bad news, no? That the metallurgy is very dirty, that you're going to generate radioactivity, that is very contaminating. So the starting point was not a good one, but in our latest survey, we have received 70% of support, between support and neutrality from the community, and only 13% of radical opposition, I would say, to the project. We've worked in many different fronts, and I invite you, this is something that I like very, very much. We have created a brand in Spanish. It's called Somos Aclara, S-O-M-O-S Aclara. You can access it also through these QRs. And you'll find all the work that we're doing with the local community. It's in Spanish, but if you can access it, I think you're going to be surprised. This is in both projects we have completed PEAs. The PEA for the Penco module was done by Ausenco in Chile, the Carina module by a company called G21. You can see that Penco has 14 years, Carina 17 years. The capex in Chile is around $130 million, and in Carina 582. The NPV is 128 and 1.2 billion in the case of Carina. I think the biggest risk with these numbers is the prices used. No? As I mentioned, probably at spot prices, we're very close to break even, so it doesn't make any sense to invest in these projects. But these prices, the prices used have been produced by independent analysts. But I think it continues to be one of the challenges that we have is how we're going to convince, the automakers to pay these premiums for these important elements. No? The average cost is very low. As I mentioned, this is a very simple process, and we intend to start operations in Chile in 2027 and in Brazil in 2029. Right now, in the case of Carina, we're working on a feasibility study. We're doing a PFS and then an FS, and we have hired Hatch in Brazil to do this. Just to give you an idea of the things that you have seen, we so far have invested $150 million US dollars already to develop these projects to the state where they are, no? And we're trading right now virtually at zero, no? So I believe it's a great opportunity to invest right now. This is how we compare with other ionic clays. We have this company, again, ASX listed. They have a project in Uganda and Meteoric, no? I let you work on this slide a little bit later and to go into the detail, but what I can tell you is that probably we have the highest contents of dysprosium and terbium, no, of the heavy rare earths, and we're trading definitely at a significant discount. This is our vertical integration strategy. We are focused on the mining front. At the beginning, that's where we started, and we said, look, we are miners. We should stay as close as possible to our main or core capabilities. And our intention was to develop partnerships with other separation companies and other metallization companies. There are not many, and with the pilot plant, we have been able to send samples to, I would say, not only all of these, but to around 18 different companies worldwide. Have received their feedback, they love the product, but these companies think that they can buy our product very cheaply and that they are going to be capturing the margins. And we believe otherwise, no? We believe that the power is with mining, with a scarce resource, with the heavy rare earths. So essentially what we have decided is to enter this space. We right now are working with SRC. SRC is Saskatchewan Research Council, a Canadian company. I think nice part of what they have is they have 2 Chinese engineers that have the knowledge of doing the solvent extraction in China. And we have hired Hatch in Canada as well in order to convert this flow sheet into a CAPEX and OPEX and an initial study. You know? So we're in the process of completing this. This is going to come out definitely before the year ends. And then in our partnership with CAP, CAP is great. As I mentioned, they have a steel mill in Chile, so they have a lot of experience producing ferroalloys. And the combination of what we can provide in terms of materials and their experience in metallurgy, we believe we're in early days right now. We have hired people from this company, from Less Common Metals, who can do the metallization in the UK. So we're putting together, I would say, a prime team in order to develop this technology. And finally, it was not ready for when we sent the presentation for this conference, but yesterday in the morning we have announced a strategic partnership with Vacuum Schmelze, with VAC. They are very important for 2 things. The first one is that they already have a contract with General Motors to supply them with magnets, and they are building a plant in the US, in South Carolina, to do this. No? So that's the first thing. And the second important thing is that the US, through the Department of Defense, have given them a grant of $100 million, you know, in financial support to build this plant. So, and they are super supportive of our full strategy of integration. And of course, when you read the press release, you'll notice that one of the things they value most is the fact that we have, again, the dysprosium and terbium, the heavy rare earths. Right now, by the way, you can only find all of this together in one place in China. So this is a great opportunity to diversify geopolitically for all of these OEMs. What's coming? There are lots of news coming. Here is a summary of some of them. We finalized the piloting of the Carina module, and we have announced the drilling campaign, the drill holes. We have published the real drill holes. And what we have said already in that press release is that in Carina we had 8 meters of mineralization, and those 8 meters are going to be now close to 12 meters of mineralization. So that gives you an idea throughout the deposit of what's the size of the resource increase that is about to come. We're going to be announcing that resource in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And with those, we're also going to be updating the PEA. That's already underway. Probably the first week of September, we'll have a new PEA. And for next year, we are going to complete the baseline studies. We're going to present the EIA, and we're going to complete the feasibility study with Hatch. In Penco, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we have presented once again our EIA for evaluation in country. And we're going to be next year completing our feasibility study there. And in terms of vertical integration, there's news to come as well. So let me close there, saying that what we like about Aclara is that we have very scarce elements. Again, according to the DOE, the most critical of all critical elements. We're going to be doing it using very high environmental standards. That should be, an obligatory standpoint, but the reality is that today the most sophisticated companies in the world, they don't know where their rare earths are coming from, especially the heavy rare earths. And the idea of being able to develop a mine-to-magnet solution is quite unique. I don't think that you'll find that easily. And the beauty of that is that if we are able to accomplish that goal, you will know that integrated companies trade at significantly higher multiples than mining companies. So that's the dream, that's the goal. It's not going to happen overnight, but that's what we're trying to pursue. Thank you very much. Maybe, Curry, we have time for a few questions?
Yeah, absolutely. We got about 15 minutes. Got one. Here, sir. Give us what appears to be fairly straightforward, simple processes in uranium. The market, so the capex seems really high. Why is that? What's going on there?
No, I see it in look, sorry. Okay, first of all, the most significant overcost that we have is hauling the clays from the pit to the plant and then bringing it back, the amount, and just to give you an idea of proportions, out of 1 ton, the grade is very low. It's easy to extract, but it's also very low. So out of a ton, we're going to be extracting around 150 grams of clays. So the size of the tanks has to be dimensioned, for a relatively large size of material, After that, the rest is tanks, agitators, pumps. The other expensive thing, and that incurs also in our highest energy consumption, is the water treatment plant, in order to be able to recirculate this amount of water. We have also a nanofiltration plant to eliminate all the hard metals so that they go into the reverse osmosis plant, to eliminate that first. Then we have a very common and straightforward reverse osmosis plant. So really, apart from that, it's just managing relatively large amounts of material, but there's no particular large equipment that requires a lot of capex or anything like that. I would say it's rather straightforward. Acting? Yeah. Look, we have a very large package of concessions in Chile. Chile, the deposit is very small on purpose, because we believe there's the opportunity to put more modules in Chile, but the country right now requires they require to gain a lot of confidence in this type of investments, showing them that it's rather innocuous what we are doing, and then we will be able to open more deposits there. In Brazil, we have a huge land package. We're rather early movers there. We have a lot of information for potential new deposits yet to be found. We do have a greenfields effort. Then we're in Peru. In Peru, we also have mining concessions that have ionic clays, but they are in areas I am Peruvian, they are in areas that are not too friendly for investment, so we're just keeping them. We have created a subsidiary also in the United States, because we're putting all this technology development of separation and metallization in the US. We believe, after talking to many US investors, that they value a lot the technological aspect of the business. So we have not defined a site or a location or anything, but when we envision where would it be ideal to do separation and metallization, we believe that the US could be perfect. Why? Because there could be a free money from the government, hopefully, no, or easy, not easy nor free, but cheap, I don't know, no, I want to use the right word, money from the government, and also be close to clients that we believe are going to understand that there's a significant conflict with China, no, in having only one supplier of the rare earths.
I'm sorry, sir, I was curious about patents.
The patents. In many countries, top of my head, we're patented in Chile, Brazil, the US, Australia, even China. Francois knows it better than me, but at least all of those.
In the countries you're extracting specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
And many others, no?
Okay.
Yeah. Could be. The initial goal is, I mean, we need to have an immediate solution, which is to put it back, but it could be used for many other purposes as well. It's a lot of clay, no? So probably we will not be able to use all of it for other purposes, but at least a fraction and monetize some of that could happen, yes.
You know, to the truck.
Yes.
It's going to save somebody else from getting out bigger root tiles.
And the other interesting thing that's happening, no, and we'll need to analyze these trade-offs. But Brazil is a country that requires a lot of fertilizer, and we're using a fertilizer and we're washing it back. So there's people who already have started to ask us, why don't you leave a little bit of the fertilizer in those clays, and we can use it, no, to create a more agricultural friendly areas, no? Could be. Yes, I think that the devil is in the details, no? The amounts of reagents, the pH, the different steps, how the solution flows throughout the circuit, no? You are completely right, no? The chemistry for this is very simple. No? So simple that in China they do it at open space and anybody can do it. No? I think the patentable part is fine-tuning it, optimizing it, rather than the core. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm confused in that you're explaining a very simple process, where by looking at MP materials and rare earth elements and minus, they've been struggling for years of how a pilot plant extracting.
Yes.
What is the gap?
The gap is very simple, is the source of the material. No? They have a hard rock material, they have a monazite, and the chemical bonds of the rare earths inside that monazite are very, very tough to break. Here, nature has already done that, no? Because what we have is in the bedrock, we do have the monazite, but on top of that, we have these layers of clays in areas. And the way I don't know if this is true or not, but the way some geologists portray this to me is same as with wine. We're in regions relative to the equator, similar as in China, where the summers are very hot, the winters are very cold, and there's a lot of precipitation. And what that has allowed is that the clays, I think the correct word is they have absorbed, no, absorbed the ions of the monazite of the rare earths. So they are very easy to extract with the right reagent. So we don't have to do anything on the contrary that MP or Lynas have to do. They have a cracking, leaching process that is extremely complex. It consumes a lot of energy, water, energy, and most importantly, Lynas does this in Malaysia. Why? No? Because they have a radioactive tailings that they need to find where to put it, no? And they couldn't do it in Australia, so they had to do it in Malaysia. MP Materials cannot do it in the US for the same reason, environmental reasons, and although they are a US-based company, they are shipping their ore to China for processing. They also have a monazite. The difference here is they have a very high grade. Their deposits have I think between, I would say combining the two, between 6 and 8.5% of grade of rare earths, total rare earths. We have 0.3%, no? So their grade is much higher, ours is much lower, but their process is very complex. Ours is like a simple heap leach, you know, gold deposit with 1.5 grams that it's very easy to extract, no? It's a different paradigm because the ore is different. Joe. What is the potential for the resource? Look, I think the best way for me to give you information that is already public in the drill holes that we showed is we showed a mineralization. Our first campaign in Carina, we did it very cheaply with auger drilling, no? So it was very cheap, but not too deep. So now we've done reverse circulation. We've gone down all the way to 40 meters, 50 meters in some instances. But we have found that the average of the mineralization goes from 8 meters to around 12 meters. So that should give you an idea roughly of how much the resource is going to grow. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for attending. Thank you.